No, you have to come here to qualify. And we're going to do that drawing Friday morning on the early game. So stop in and fill that out. Say hey. And again, check out all the cool stuff that's going on here at the Nest. 1331 Gadsden in the Vista. And we're here till 3 o'clock. All right, Tyler. So we got to start. We'll focus on the college football playoff, obviously, where South Carolina's moved up, man. You're sitting at 15. Again, the two teams that beat you are in front of you in Bama and Ole Miss. Clemson, and I'm not saying this because, we're the flagship home of the Gamecocks and we're supposed to hate everything Clemson. The fact that Clemson is at number 12 is kind of a head scratcher. I'm not going to lie. They've beaten no one.
It is questionable, but in a way, it potentially helps out South Carolina if you're able to beat them this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the committee views them as the 12th best team and you beat them in their home venue with their favor, that's going to be a pretty good resume booster for you.
That's what I was getting ready to say. The good news is they're in front of you at 12, and if you beat them, that adds to your much more impressive list of wins than Clemson has. South Carolina's got a more impressive list of wins than multiple teams in front of them. So it's not just Clemson. So I'm not just sitting here picking on Clemson because, it's supposed to be my job. But it just is. I mean, the resume, Clemson's resume, your best win was at Pitt. Is that fair?
So, fun fact, Pitt is the only bowl-eligible team that Clemson has defeated this year.
Yeah, I mean, and that game was kooky at Pitt.
Didn't have their starting quarterback.
Right, they played their backup quarterback. Yeah, again, the Clemson resume. Thanks for stopping out. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. Again, the Clemson resume, not that impressive, but like you said, how it benefits South Carolina if you beat the number 12 team in the college football playoff rankings in their house when they're favored, that's just going to help your resume. Now, obviously, if you're South Carolina, look, I get it. Now, do I think South Carolina's playing better than Ole Miss and Alabama at this point? Sure. Look what happened last Saturday to both Ole Miss and Alabama. Lost games they had no business losing. So, yes, I feel like South Carolina's playing better, Tyler, but I get it. If you look at resume, you lost in Tuscaloosa in a game you should have won. Ole Miss was the better team here that Saturday earlier in the year. So I understand in theory that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, and I understand head-to-head has to matter at the end of the day, and I'm fine with things sitting the way they are as of right now. My question is, can you jump over an Ole Miss or Alabama, or is those head-to-heads so important to the committee that even with the win against Carolina, against Clemson, which would move everybody up theoretically at least one spot, is that the only movement you'd see? Would South Carolina perennially always be behind Ole Miss and Alabama?
All right, well, let's talk about that for a second because that's where we were going to go as well. All right, Alabama is going to play Auburn at home.
Yes.
Auburn had a very nice win on the Plains last Saturday in 72 overtimes over A&M. I understand that. But Auburn this year is a bottom feeder in the SEC. They're 2-5 in league, 5-6 overall. So if Alabama, curb stomps Auburn at home, is that a better win than beating Clemson on the road, who is 12th in the college football playoff? I would say not, sir.
It's not.
Then you have Ole Miss hosting the worst team in the SEC, Mississippi State. I do believe that our account executive, Jeff Haley, Jeannie, you and I could give Mississippi State a run. If we played 4-11, I think we have a shot. So beating Mississippi State like a drum for Ole Miss, is that a better win than beating number 12 Clemson at Clemson?
It's not.
Okay, so let's say all three are 9-3. South Carolina gets the better W. Okay, so the two teams in front of them, let's say that win means something. And then let's say you beat Clemson, who is 12. How interesting does that get, sir?
It becomes a debate, which, again, the committee has contradicted themselves at times, so it's not always going to be consistent week to week. But, again, you make a strong case for yourself, especially if you can go out there and beat Clemson by, let's say, 10 or 14 points, a convincing win over a higher-ranked team in their home venue. You make it very hard, in my opinion, for the committee, regardless of what happens in the Iron Bowl or the Egg Bowl, to say that no, Carolina shouldn't be able to jump those other two teams.
All right, so then you also look at the fact, let's go for that perfect world scenario. You beat Clemson at Clemson, and then, again, Ole Miss and Alabama win whatever. And then you've beaten Clemson, so the three teams in front of you, it looks good for you. So let's just say for fun, you would look at that 12 hole. Boise State is sitting at 11. The Mountain, they're the group of five. A group of five teams got to get in no matter what. Indiana at 10. Indiana has, what are they calling them? Per don't?
Yes.
In the, by the way, I love the bottom 10. So, I mean, Indiana should never lose to that team. Indiana's been whooping teams like that by 40 all year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't feel like that's something, to be quite honest. And, SMU's in the ACC championship game, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so SMU could just get the automatic bid out of the ACC, right?
Yes, between SMU, Miami, and if Miami loses Syracuse, Clemson in front of Carolina, one of those three teams is guaranteed to be in by winning the ACC.
All right, and so SMU is at home against Cal, who is they've set up this great process of how do we lose close games.
Yes.
They did that for a while this year. So they have Cal at home. They should beat Cal at home, but look, anything's on the table these days. And then it moves up to a Tennessee and a Georgia and things like that. So, I mean, you can see the getting yourself in the debate by jumping over the three teams ahead of you. That's when it gets a little dicey, right?
Yes. Again, we're going to play out a million different scenarios probably over the course of the show. You're in position to make the committee's decision very difficult.
Yes, you are.
Which is the best thing that you can say for yourself, because they're at least going to have to think about it.
And how funny is it? We talked in the beginning of this thing about could a three-loss SEC team get in the college football playoff? We're talking about the three-loss South Carolina team getting in the SEC in the college football playoff.
Well, that's the funny thing here is, we all wrote Alabama off last week after losing to Oklahoma, an ugly, bad loss on the road by 3 touchdowns where they didn't look remotely competitive the entire game. And here we are sitting here saying, okay, well, Alabama's technically only the second team out as of right now. If there's any inkling of chaos ahead of them, if the committee's not willing to jump Carolina over them, they might still get in.
Yeah, that's the crazy part of this. Alabama, and you obviously you hang your hat on that win over Georgia, right? That's what you do.
But so can Ole Miss.
Yeah, so can Ole Miss. And when you look at Alabama, they got to win over South Carolina as well. The flip side of that is, though, that loss to Oklahoma was bad, man.
Well,
and then the loss to Vandy. Look, the loss to Vandy, because they're Vandy this year is sitting at 6-5, 3-4 in league. Oklahoma 6-5, 2-5. Those are two losses that honestly, they should be held against Alabama a lot harder if you're going to start piecing these resumes up with the 3-loss teams.
And I guess if we're comparing resumes, because again, two of the better wins for both Ole Miss and Alabama are over South Carolina and over Georgia. So I guess the difference between 12 and 13 is the fact that Alabama lost to a little bit better Oklahoma team than what Ole Miss did in losing to a bad Kentucky team earlier on this year, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Ole Miss's losses, again, they lost to LSU, so did South Carolina. It felt like LSU was better. LSU just, let's face it, LSU just cratered.
LSU's hurting everybody's resumes right now.
Yes, they cratered. It was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
The Florida loss, look, Florida's they've played better, but they're a mediocre team in every way, shape, or form. Then that Kentucky loss is, it's like, that's an awful loss. So South Carolina's losses, you got 2 by 5 points to Alabama and LSU.
Yep.
And the only loss that, by numbers as bad as you got beat pretty soundly by Ole Miss, but again, Ole Miss is an 8-3 team. So really, if we go by the part of your quality of losses, so to speak, South Carolina's resume is better than Bama or Ole Miss, but South Carolina doesn't have a win like either one of those two do over Georgia.
This is why we have a committee, Terry.
My head hurts. My head officially hurts. I think I've given myself a tumor. This thing is ridiculous. But it's fun. Hey, look, we just killed 12 minutes.
This is gold for us, right?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. But again, South Carolina, the number one thing is you got to go to the upstate and you got to take out Clemson or nothing else matters. And the flip side is Clemson looks up and goes, wow, we're 12. Okay. All righty. And that's the thing, because Clemson, this is what they're doing in the upstate on their sports talk. They're piecing it together. Well, we got to beat South Carolina, and then here's what's got to happen. So And we'll continue this conversation on the other side, but obviously we'll start to focus on South Carolina Clemson as well. Get some thoughts from Shane Beamer next, talking about controlling the message with his football team. It's a halftime show live from the Nest, where I'm just going to go sit in the tub till 3 o'clock right here on the Game. Halftime show. We are rolling from the nest here in the Vista, 1331 Gadsden. One of my favorite places to hang out. Kitchen's phenomenal. Got a tub I can use, lighting, plumbing.
Now you're going to
And,
entice someone to try and test one of their tubs.
Thinking about it, maybe I shouldn't have brought up that test drive in the tub thing.
Again, we have reach. A lot of people listen to this.
They do have a great selection of Bosch appliances, though. Stoves, ovens, dishwashers. The tagline, we always say here, is cook like a Bosch, clean like a Bosch. So stop in. I mean, and we are sitting it just looks like a very cool kitchen in someone's home. It's fantastic. Come on by if you want to go to see South Carolina Clemson, the football game on Saturday. Maybe you want to go see Carolina Clemson baseball or Carolina Clemson men's basketball. We will give you tickets to all three events, but you got to show up here to qualify. Very simple, very easy.
That's kind of the fun thing about this rivalry. And, Beamer alluded to yesterday. I think Dabo did as well. A lot of times when we look at like Georgia Tech and the Iron Bowl and stuff like that, a lot of people just kind of primarily focus on what happens on the football field, which is obviously the most important game in most people's eyes. But the Palmetto series really does stretch across all sports, and people have a deep care for, hey, South Carolina soccer beat Clemson soccer, and people are going to brag about that. Like, it really does run through all the sports at the end of the day.
It does. I think that's what's interesting, because you're right. Mostly it's either, like Duke, North Carolina in basketball. They don't really talk about it in football or anything else. It's just basketball.
Think they're aware when they play that football game?
I don't think so. Really don't. I don't think they even know about the basketball.
You don't think the Cameron Crazies get out for that one?
Yeah, Krzyzewskiville isn't full. Now it would be Manny Diazville.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, Manny Diazville.
Doesn't have the same ring to it.
No, it just really doesn't. So stop in and you just fill out one of our little entry blanks, and we will do that drawing Friday morning at 7:30 on the early game. You will win tickets to go see South Carolina Clemson football, South Carolina Clemson men's basketball this coming up season, and South Carolina Clemson baseball next year, with obviously Paul Mainieri and the Gamecocks taking on Clemson. All right. Shane Beamer, Tuesday presser, talking about a bunch of different things, mostly all Clemson. Here's Shane. Let's get cut one, Tyler. Talking about controlling the message with his football team this week, because again, there's Thanksgiving. It's not a normal week in some ways. So here's Shane talking about the message.
I think they've been good. We talked about it a little bit on Sunday, Hale, what I said on Saturday night. We play Saturday. We bring them in on Sunday afternoon. We have a 1:45 team meeting on Sundays, and then we don't see them again as far as a full team until Tuesday morning. So I addressed it a little bit on Sunday, just in regards to you're going to be out in the wild, as you say, for the next 2 days before we see you again. Let's make sure we have an understanding of this opponent, this game, our mindset, especially this week because we don't have class. Got no all day Monday with no classes, so they got a lot of time on their hands. And then, this morning was like any other team meeting that we normally have to start the week, in that we introduced the opponent just like we've done, and talked about their offense, defense, special teams, coaching, and what we need to do to win the football game. And I'm not dumb. I know it's magnified, and it's magnified this year because of what we've done. It's magnified because we're a ranked team. Clemson's been a ranked team all these years. Finally, South Carolina comes in here as a ranked team. So it's magnified and big and has implications because of what we've done, along with Clemson, which they've done each year. So, for us, it's the team that prepares the best and coaches the best and plays the best is going to be the one that wins on Saturday, not the one that gets caught up in whatever on social media or talking in press conferences and things like that. So we just need to focus on going 1-0, and that's been our message all year, and this week's no different.
Yeah, sort of like the Auburn, Alabama thing that's going on, which is quite interesting. I love Jalen Milroe too. He's just like, look, man, talk all you want. Who are you? That's the best comeback on that stuff, isn't it, Tyler? When somebody talks junk, the comeback is, who are you anyway?
Well,
I don't even know you.
When people say those kind of things, they're wanting to elicit a response. They want you to fire back and say something equal or something that toes the line a little bit further. And You just say, "Yeah, I don't know who you are," or who said that, or something along those lines.
Do you
Can
play?
can prove the point a little bit better. So yeah, I did like that from Jalen Milroe. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's always that's one of my favorites. Is who's that? I don't know him.
Yeah, just let the people yell into a void. That's probably the
Right.
smartest play.
My other favorite is be better than that, or aren't you better than that? I always like that one too.
But at the
'Cause then
same
what do you
time,
say?
this is why we love
Mhm.
this week. This is why we love these
Sure.
games. You know, South Carolina, Clemson, Auburn, Alabama. It's because of this hatred that we know exists from the fan base standpoint, but there's a lot of that within the locker rooms too. A lot of these guys played against each other, played with each other, and there's nothing they want more than to beat that guy on the other side. Now, yes, the stakes of the Iron Bowl maybe not quite are what they've been in years past, but still a big deal to people in the state of Alabama. And you know, they're one team's going to have bragging rights for the next 365 days.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about it. And, you look at this whole thing with Clemson, South Carolina. 2 years ago, South Carolina goes upstate and wins, and that's great. Last year, you just couldn't move the ball. You just couldn't. I mean, your offensive line was so shredded with injuries and ineffectiveness that we watched that game from the press box. There
Yep.
was just no way that South Carolina was going to move the football against Clemson, and Clemson wins a game without an offensive touchdown.
Yep. And again, we can throw out all the ifs, ands, and if that's what happened, if this would have happened, but it's the end of the day, they won. And for the past 365 days, Clemson fans have had
Mhm.
all the bragging rights, and rightfully so, because they won the game. The shoe can be on the other foot this weekend if Carolina wins. Not only that, Carolina could win and potentially vault themselves into the playoffs while watching Clemson, assuming Miami's able to beat Syracuse, be on the outside looking in. So you want to talk about bragging rights? That'd be some bragging rights.
Oh yeah, and look at these last two games. Well, first of all, Carolina wins. Then, I mean, that thing was a slog last year, but it wasn't a blowout. So you've held your own in the last two. You feel like you remember there for a while, Clemson was dominating, right?
Yeah.
You lost a bunch in a row. They weren't close. Beamer's first year, that thing wasn't close at all against Clemson. In these last two, you win one. The other one was that wasn't a blowout. You held your own in a lot of ways. You just couldn't move the ball because your offensive line just wasn't giving you a chance. This year, uh, if you're South Carolina, you're saying, our resume is better than theirs.
Mm-hmm.
We got a defense that can get after you. Offensively, we're playing our best football right now on the offensive side of the ball. So you're feeling really good rolling upstate, Tyler.
And look, well, we talked to a guy from Tiger Illustrated in the last hour, and the first question I asked him was, how does Clemson's fan base view this Carolina team? And a lot of them are very concerned about what they're going to see this weekend. This is the most evenly matched these two teams have been in basically a decade, going back to the end of South Carolina's 5-in-a-row streak, running through 2013 when they were perennially playing each other as ranked teams, sometimes both teams within the top 10. That's not been the case. And hats off to Clemson for everything they've done with the national championships and playoff appearances, but they're not at that level as of right now, and Carolina seems to be surging.
So it's going to be interesting on Saturday, 7:00 Gamecocks game day. We get this baby going from Mission Control. Tyler Head, myself, David Dare. We go till a little bit before 9. Then the SEC report. After that, Chris Miller and the network will jump in with their pregame up until noon. The kickoff, South Carolina, Clemson. You can hear it right here at 107.5 The Game in Columbia and 100.3 The Game, our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. We'll come back. Here's some more Shane. One of the interesting things about this football game is the quarterbacks. We'll hear Shane talk about Cade Klubnik, and also we'll discuss Lenora Sellers and the Clemson QB coming back. It is the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. Jeff's here. Jeannie's here. We are at the Nest, 1331 Gadsden. Stop by. I mean, look, if you're doing anything to the home, this is the place to come to. 70 years of experience here. Jeff's eating food. Come say hi to him. A massive selection of Bosch, whether it's stoves, ovens, dishwashers. Cook like a Bosch, clean like a Bosch. We're here at the Nest. You can also register to qualify to win South Carolina Clemson football, baseball, and men's basketball tickets. Shane, we're going to talk quarterbacks next, right here on the halftime show on the game. Oh, what we're talking about live from the nest is obviously South Carolina Clemson rivalry week. We will have the game here starting with Gamecocks game day at 7 a.m. We're hanging here at the Nest 1331 Gadsden in the Vista. We're talking to Graham here a minute ago, and we were just talking about Thanksgiving and yipping about, is he cooking, is he eating? Because I eat. It works out perfect. My girlfriend cooks and I eat. It's just a 50-50 deal.
Perfect setup.
She cooks for hours and I eat for hours. I think that's even.
I'm sure she loves that.
Absolutely. She's down with it.
She's never
I said,
complained once, right?
Yeah. Oh, she never complains. Because look, when you have this gift of me, what would you complain about?
I don't know what you could complain about, Terry.
That's right. To be able to hang with me,
So
what would you complain about?
What a blessing she has, huh?
I tell her that all the time as I'm going to sleep on the couch.
I'm
What
sure
a blessing
you
you have, sweetheart, as you've kicked me once again out of the bedroom and I'm going to go sleep on the couch. Remember the gift you have of Terry. So we were talking about it, and Graham does a little cooking, and the wife started a little cooking. I'm like, no, I stay away from, anything that involves, heat or fire or flame. They told me that the stoves here, the ovens, the stoves, the cooking appliances here are so good they would be Terry proof. I could even cook on these. That's how good they are.
That is is there a sticker on the appliance that says that? Because that is
it should say Terry proof stickers. I think what we should do, because Graham is the god of all of this area here. We should do a video of me cooking something and nothing catches on fire. We should do that, and then we put that out for the nest.
I think their sales would skyrocket after that.
They would go, if that fool can cook on it, anybody can. We've had a couple folks come in already to register for the tickets for South Carolina Clemson this Friday. Also, South Carolina men's basketball against Clemson this year with Lamont Paris and the crew, and South Carolina baseball with Clemson. Obviously, the early series next year. So all you got to do is come in, you fill out your little form. But while you're here, too, I mean, you got to look around at all the great stuff. The Bosch stuff is here. Let's move the appliances out of the way. Fixtures, lighting. Whatever you need to do to spruce up the home, this is the place to come to. And the experience here, over 70 years of experience. These folks know what's up. Trust me. Graham invented refrigerators. He built the first refrigerator.
Is that
That's
a fact,
how experienced
or
Graham.
did he
Graham,
tell you that?
If you go to Wikipedia, you'll see history of refrigerator. It says Graham from the Nest built the first refrigerator. That's how experienced they are. So come on in and check it out.
I'll take your word.
Would I ever make up anything just for radio purposes?
Well, no comment.
Exactly. All right, rivalry week, South Carolina Clemson. We'll get back to some college football playoff. The college football playoff poll came out. We'll get into that. Again, we started the whole show with it. But let's swing back to Carolina Clemson. Shane Beamer talking to the media yesterday. Cade Klubnik, the Clemson quarterback, to his credit, has improved a lot this year. Cade Klubnik was a detriment the last couple of seasons, especially last year when he took over the reins as a starting quarterback from DJU. Klubnik, I mean, remember the decision making? Remember the Miami game?
Yeah,
we decided he was going to keep it and go around end, and it did not end. It did not go well.
There were a couple times last year where he went into business for himself, much to the chagrin of Dabo Swinney, and he didn't pop the way people thought he was going to and go into in year number one. He obviously came in for DJU at the end of 22 season and helped them win the ACC championship game. But year number one as a starter did not go the way they wanted to. But like you said, credit to him because he has taken massive steps forward this year as a big part for why this Clemson offense has been successful.
Especially as a deep ball thrower. Last year, Klubnik was one of the worst deep ball throwers in the country. This year, he's hitting like 43% of his shots over 20 yards down the field. Antonio Williams, wide receiver, has bounced back from an injury-plagued season to be the go-to guy. But here's the interesting part. Yes, Williams is the go-to guy, but Williams also has 7 drops on the year. So keep that in the back of your head. Clemson is a team with 23, 7 of them from Antonio Williams. Here's Shane Beamer talking about the improvement of the Clemson quarterback, Cade Klubnik.
Yeah, as far as Cade, I think, you see some similarities, just the way that probably the biggest thing that jumps out, Alan, is their ability to get themselves out of trouble in the pocket. I mean, he's Lenoris, obviously, it's been well written and talked about some of the sacks that he's gotten out of. You could say the same thing about Cade as well. I mean, there's a lot of plays where he's sacked and he comes out of there, and it's not just coming out of there, it's coming out of there and throwing a 50-yard touchdown pass. He had one against Virginia Tech, where they had him on the ground. He comes out of it, throws a touchdown pass down Virginia Tech's right sideline. There's one against Virginia where he gets out of it, rolls out, and throws a deep ball down the left side to Virginia's sideline. There's one against Pitt where he gets out of there and runs for positive yardage. So his ability to get himself out of trouble is really, really impressive. And then I think just the way that he's grown as a passer as well. You see that development just like Lenoris, and think a lot of him. I got to know him in high school when I was coaching at Oklahoma, and Austin, Texas was my recruiting area. And so, recruited him, and we had him up to a couple games in Norman from down there in Austin, and think a lot of him as a person and enjoy, watching him play.
Yeah, Klubnik has gotten better. The decision-making, the throwing the ball, especially down the field, has gotten better. The offense is just better this year, Tyler. Now, is their defense as good as it's been in the past, in these previous so many years when they were basically the defense was carrying the team?
Yep.
No, the defense is probably not as good as those squads. I mean, they can still bring some heat off the edge, but I mean, you had your guy on who covers Clemson on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Wes and yourself, and he even talked about running the ball up the middle against Clemson. Clemson not as stout in the run game as they've been in previous years, and that's something that last year South Carolina couldn't run the ball.
Yep.
Offensive line, the backs were kind of this year a much better running team. You throw the quarterback in there also this year, Tyler, the threat of Lenoris Sellers to take off on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when you talk about the run game at Clemson, it's primarily predicated on what Phil Moffitt is doing, 1,000-yard rusher, fourth in the ACC in that regard. But Klubnik is somebody you always have to account for, and he's not going to run the ball as much as Zay Sellers probably is in this game on Saturday. But go back to a couple weeks ago, that win against Pitt, it all came at the very end because he broke off that 50-yard touchdown run. I believe he was untouched going in the end zone. So he has the ability to hurt you with his feet. It's more selective when he does it, but nevertheless, he's effective.
Did you see that run?
I did.
It's almost Klubnik was surprised that nobody was near him.
It was how many buses could you have drove through that hole, by the way?
It was unreal. So yeah, Klubnik can do things with his legs. You're right. He's not Lenoris Sellers, but he can do stuff with his legs and affect the run game. A lot of this to me with Clemson is can you stop Phil Maffa? And if you can stop or slow down Phil Maffa, to me, that's your recipe for slowing down that offense and forcing Cade Klubnik now to have to throw the ball a lot more than Clemson wants him to.
And it is worth noting that Clemson is very beat up on their offensive line, and Dabo Swinney did allude to yesterday that they've got guys that they are working to get back as starters this upcoming weekend on the exact health of them. But I imagine the entire offensive line is going to be at 100%. And when you go back to that game against Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago, Phil Maffa only had 17 yards on 17 carries. Not a good day running the football, because when you look, the bulk of his yards come running to the left of center, which is where the majority of those injuries have happened. So the fact that offensive line Cade Klubnik was sacked 5 times in that game as well, the offensive line issues are becoming a problem, and they have not seen a defense as good as South Carolina's probably since the Georgia game at the beginning of the year. So that could be an area that the Gamecocks could exploit.
Yeah, and when you look at Maffa, everything is between the tackles. Most of his yards are between the tackles. And so, and again, that goes to the injuries with Clemson, but also South Carolina, the interior of their defensive line with Boogie and Tonka. And, if DeAndre Jules is healthy and TJ Sanders, and those guys this year much better against the run than they were last season up until November when the defense just started to kick in. But that's going to be a huge battle. A huge key to this game is, can South Carolina's interior and the linebackers, can they win up against the interior of that Clemson offensive line? So I think if you slow down Phil Maffa, that really helps you get toward a victory. Now, the flip side, Lenoris Sellers the last 2 weeks, oh my God. Look, forget Wofford for a minute. We get it. It was Wofford. But that week before against Missouri, when you couldn't run the ball and that, one of the best defenses in America all of a sudden was getting run on by Missouri, you had to look over at the passing game and the quarterback and go, hey, guys, we need your help. Well, and they stepped up huge.
And again, you look going to this week and saying, okay, Sellers probably going to continue on what he's been doing this entire year and have another really great game. And that's obviously going to help bring the entire team along.
Jeannie was asking for the keys. I got distracted.
All right.
Because I can't do 2 things at once. I've lost my mind. I'm just way too sober today. All right. Firehouse Subtext, the hour coming up. 803-404-6100. Feel free to get in there. I think Elijah and I were yapping about a Twitter poll. I believe Elijah put one up at 1075 The Game on Twitter X. So we're going to jump into that coming up. We're live from the Nest. We'll talk about all the cool stuff going on here at the Nest on Gadsden. Your chance to win some tickets for that game this Saturday in the Upstate Halftime Show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game. Hanging out live from the Nest, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista. Pop on over. Check out the phenomenal selection of Bosch appliances, stoves, ovens, dishwashers. Cook like a Bosch, clean like a Bosch. All of the stoves and ovens are Terry-proof. So check that out. And while you're here, you can register to win tickets for this Saturday's game in the upstate with South Carolina Clemson. We have a few folks already stopped by. We're going to be here till 3. This is the only way you can win these tickets. You can't call in. You can't go on social media. You can't go to our website. You have to show up here and register. And again, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista.
And contrary to popular belief, sliding Terry a $20 bill does not increase your chances.
Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, no, you're exactly right. It does not in any way, shape, or form because I cannot be bought. I cannot be bribed. That was funny. I said that out loud. Only been arrested for that once.
Well, and that's why you don't live in Maryland anymore.
That's right. It's why I can't go back to the state. All right. Our Firehouse sub text the hour 803-404-6100. What do you got, Bob?
God love all the possible scenarios here. Nameless texter weighs in and says, what happens if Carolina wins, Miami loses, and Clemson wins the ACC? Clemson and SMU are both in because you don't punish the team for making the championship game. But what about the team who beat your league champion? Carolina even though they lost to two teams head-to-head directly, or Carolina in even though they lost to two teams head-to-head directly ahead of them? Question mark. I know it's all over the place.
That's so good. I mean, and really, feel free. Feel free to send them all in at the Firehouse subs text line.
Give us your ultimate chaos scenario. Like, what could you realistically see unfolding, not just this weekend, but conference championship weekend, that could just blow this entire thing up?
Yeah, I mean, go for it. Get nutty. Think in your skull and just go crazy.
But that is an interesting question to ask. And I brought this point up earlier where, yes, Carolina could technically win this game against Clemson this weekend, potentially vault themselves into a spot to be on the verge of the playoff. But if Syracuse beats Miami and Clemson wins the ACC, Clemson, by virtue of winning the ACC, could still actually bump Carolina by virtue of their automatic bid, funny enough.
It's ridiculous. And then, and the point of the texter brings up an interesting point that in theory we should agree with, but maybe not. If you make your conference championship game, and you lose, should that mean something? I think, let's take a step back from it. Like in the Big 12, getting there doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, you're one.
You got to win.
League. Yeah,
you're one big league. In the ACC, there's a question: should they get 2 bids in the first place?
Yeah,
and they sure shouldn't get 3. But let's get to the ACC for a minute. And you say, okay, you have Clemson. Let's say they lose to South Carolina. Then you have a 3-loss Clemson, and let's say they get to the ACC championship game and lose. A tight ACC championship game to SMU. Should you then give Clemson a spot with 3 losses and the resume with the best wins against Pitt?
I think the context of this argument is assuming the teams in the championship game are already in the playoff going in. So if things stay chalk and Miami and SMU both win this weekend, they will be playing as 2 teams already in the conference championship game next weekend where, let's just say Miami wins the game, right? And SMU, being the lower ranked team, would be assumed to lose that game. Do you drop SMU out for playing an extra game and losing that one, as opposed to saying, okay, well, then we're going to let an extra team like Alabama in who didn't make their conference championship game? Oh, by the way, has more losses than SMU at that point.
But you ready? The precedent for this craziness has been set because Alabama has made the college football playoff without even playing in the SEC championship game. If you remember.
They have. We obviously knew that door was open now with an expanded playoff because there was going to be more teams than the ones that made the championship game. But I don't know. My perception of where I thought we'd be going into the final week of the regular season is completely off from where we actually are.
It's insane. That's what I'm saying. This is insane now. Like Georgia, let's say Georgia loses the SEC championship game.
Yes.
A 3-loss Georgia getting to the SEC championship game, the best conference in college football, right now sitting 7 in the college football playoff. Let's say they lose 34-33 to Texas.
Well,
what are you going to do now?
Remember, Georgia went in number 1 last year.
And they lost and fell to 5.
They dropped to 6.
6, that's right.
Because Florida State became a 3-point loss in a championship game took them from being the best team in the country to number 6. So nothing's impossible. I think, especially if it's Texas that they play and Texas gets their lick back, then you have a split between the 2 teams on the season.
Yeah, your head starts to bubble just thinking about it. And we're going to continue bubbling our brain on this thing because we're going to take a look because obviously South Carolina's sitting at 15. You know, again, we talked about this earlier. If they beat Clemson, that win would be much more impressive than anything Bama or Ole Miss could do on Saturday. Would that jump them? We don't know. We're going to talk about that. And what does this committee, what do they value? We'll get into that next. Halftime show live from the Nest, 1331 Gadsden, the Vista. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, football, coming up the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors in the game. All right, so look, we're guys, we go through stuff. As you get older, things just don't happen for you like they used to. Jeff Haley's been telling me about his problems all morning. His lack of drive, his lack of good sleep. You know, he can't lift like he used to at the gym. The other day, the bar got stuck on his chest and some little old lady picked it off for him. He's just, you know, things aren't happening the way they used to. And I said, Jeff, it could just be low testosterone. 803-875-MENS. Just call the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Make the appointment. Talk to the folks there. If they think it's low T, they'll put you on a program designated and picked out and set up just for you to get you feeling like you again. 803-875-MENS. Don't feel like Jeff Haley. It might be low testosterone. Go to the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Make yourself feel better again. Halftime show live from the Nest.
Well, I think we had some technical problems there. We'll see if we can get Terry back online here in just a second. As again, he's broadcasting live out at the Nest, right down the street from us here in the Vista. As again, we're getting you set for South Carolina and Clemson coming up on Saturday in top 15 matchup based on what we learned last night with the latest college football playoff poll. Terry, do we got you back? Nope. All right, we'll work on efforting getting Terry back here. This is the magic of live radio. Sometimes you run into some of these technical problems. That's okay. We'll see what we can do with that. Let's dive back into a little bit of what Coach Beamer had to say yesterday when it came to taking a look at at this Clemson team. And we talk about the rivalry from so many different aspects and motivations coming in. Let's hit this cut here of Coach Beamer talking about the motivation from the rivalry itself.
Yeah, this is a game where Dabo's not going to have to go in the meetings throughout the week and in the locker room on Saturday and motivate his guys to play hard, and neither am I. I mean, I'm sure both teams are ready emotionally to play today. If they said, you got to be up there, we'd hop on the bus and head up today and go play. So if it's one, making sure you keep what I've talked to our guys about, just, keep your routine throughout the week as well, which is a little bit different this week because of the class situation. But keep your routine and just do what you have to do to prepare to go play your very best on Saturday. And the emotions are, part of it. And it'll be an emotional game throughout, and there'll be electricity in the air, and it's awesome to be a part of. I mean, this is fun and exciting. Last year at this time, we were 5-6. Like, that was, I don't want to say pressure, but that wasn't fun. 5-6, and if you don't win, the season's over. That's a different level of mindset than what we have this week, where this is fun and exciting to be a part of. And to me, this is going to be a yearly occurrence. Like, we're not going anywhere. Our program, we're only continuing to ascend. And Dabo and Clemson have shown they're not going anywhere. And I think a battle of ranked Carolina versus ranked Clemson, that's going to, with playoff implications in my mind, is going to be a yearly occurrence around here. So everybody better get used to it. And that's what I've told our guys, is this is fun and this is exciting. But at the same time, once the game starts, it gets down to blocking and tackling and playing with great fundamentals. And that's what's going to win this game.
And again, I think he brings up some really good points there, especially when you talk about kind of the perspective on things from, something we talked about a lot, where this team was a year ago compared to where they are now. And you look at the Clemson game a season ago where, Carolina, and to their credit, had done a really good job in the month of November winning the games they needed to win, because they went into that month sitting at 2-6, knowing they needed to win their last 4 games of the regular season just to even qualify for making a bowl game. And obviously came up short against Clemson. But now we're talking about this being a top 15 matchup, both teams still having aspirations for the college football playoff. There's a lot baked into this game already, but just going out there and trying to beat your hated in-state rival should be motivation enough, right?
Yep, you're right. And we're back. How you doing? How you been? Feeling good?
Wonderful.
Okay. Okay. Really, as we talk about this game, and we were, let's take a step back and in the bigger picture of the college football playoff. Basically, Tyler, what they value here is wins and losses.
Yes.
I mean, that's just it. I mean, let's push strength of schedule, strength of record, this metric, this analytic, this, that. No. They're old school. Oregon's undefeated. Yeah, they beat Ohio State. That was a good W. Oregon's undefeated. They're number 1. Then Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami. All with 1 loss. And they value those teams, whether it's brand name, whatever. They value the fact they've only lost 1 game all year.
Sure.
That's the value. Now, the reason like in Indiana is sitting where they are, or in SMU, you want to be real? They're not big brand names. They're just not Indiana. Everybody's going, basketball's 10-1.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana football being undefeated, that was a prove-it game. And they got, let's be real. They hung out with Ohio State till the end of the first half. Then Indiana started saying, would you like to have the football? Here, take the football. Your punter can't catch the snap. Then you give up a touchdown on a punt return. And all of a sudden, you're getting waxed, right? They're lucky they didn't fall farther. So basically, nobody believes in Indiana. SMU hasn't been a brand since Eric Dickerson and Craig James was running the football right before they got the death penalty. So nobody truly buys into SMU. And Boise State, well, I mean, they have a name-ish in the group of 5, but really they are the best group of 5 team right now because you think they barely lost to Oregon. They almost beat Oregon at home. So really it's one loss record, brand recognition, and belief, right?
It is. And that kind of brings up an interesting point where there's certainly an excitement level that we're expanding the playoffs out and you're allowing more teams to be in. And yes, we've seen a lot of parity in college football this year where on a random Saturday, you can have the Oklahomas and, beat the Alabamas and the Auburns beat the Texas A&Ms and things like that. But in terms of what it's going to take to win the national championship, you're talking about putting multiple big wins in a row against what are perceived to be the best teams in college football. And sure, could an Indiana go out there and pull an upset win over an Ohio State or an Oregon in a playoff? Absolutely. But being able to put in win after win after win, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. And it brings up the question of, are we really going to start seeing different national champions now compared to what we have been just because the field got bigger?
And the value too, and we talked about this, I think last week, of where you're at in the preseason polls. As much as they're useless, and they are useless, and they shouldn't have them, but we have them so we have something to talk about in August,
sure,
right?
We got to put numbers next to names.
Yes. And in a perfect world, you wouldn't have a true poll till the very earliest, the end of September in a real world. That way you get to see 4 games of real teams.
And especially now with how much changes in what offseason with the portal and all this kind of stuff, we have no clue what teams are going to be until typically about a month or so into the season.
So at the end of the day, really these polls are ridiculous in August, but they do set a tone and set the table. And that mixes with brand name. Look, if we took, again, you and I are big on blind resume. If you took the name Penn State off of Penn State's resume,
not that impressive.
How impressive is that? Not that impressive. Everybody beats up Indiana for their resume. Look at Penn State's.
Yep.
Penn State's resume. We go, Indiana's best wins against a mediocre Michigan team. Okay. All right, Penn State. As I bring up Penn State real quick, their biggest, let's see, Penn State, wow, they beat Minnesota. Barely. Took out Purdue, but who doesn't? Beat Washington. W's over Wisconsin, Southern Cal, UCLA. Oh, I saw that big wins Illinois. Woo, doggy. That's something.
Hey, that's a top 25 Illinois team now.
I got a question.
Yep.
Brett Bielema.
Okay.
What are the blackmail pictures? How does this team stay in the top 25?
It's a good question. Miracle win, by the way, against Rutgers this past weekend, for those that didn't see it.
That was craziness, right?
Like, Brett Bielema is a solid coach. He's not an elite coach by any means, but he does enough to keep them afloat.
Yeah. Yes. I just don't get that whole dynamic. So again, Penn State's a big brand, but Penn State's resume is, to use a technical term, just as pretty much as Indiana's, right?
Yep.
Look, Notre Dame, their pelt on the wall was Texas A&M opening week of the year. Army was ranked. Navy was Navy undefeated when they played them?
Yes.
So they beat Texas A&M. They took out, and then they took out the service academies. And that's really their best wins of the year. Miami, is a Florida win really like wow?
Well, I guess it bumps up a little bit of value considering they beat Ole Miss. So there's that. But
they beat Louisville.
Yeah, they don't have any that jump off the page at you.
No. You sit and you look through this thing. I mean, SMU has some wins that looked better than they are now. I mean, all of a sudden the Pitt win isn't as impressive. The Louisville win isn't impressive. You lost to BYU. That was a good loss, but BYU's kind of like soiled themselves recently. So my point is, these resumes we all want to sit and talk about, I think those take a back seat to, first of all, what's your one-loss record? And 2, are you a big brand? And 3, where were you in the AP or coaches preseason poll?
Let's expand off that a little bit because, again, we all thought Alabama was definitely done by losing to Oklahoma this past weekend in the fashion that they did. The fact that they're only the second team out as of right now, which means if 2 chaotic things happen ahead of them over the next 2 weeks, they could easily be in as a 3-loss team. Let's strip away the name Alabama from their resume. If that's gone and we don't know who we're talking about, is their resume, which, does have impressive wins over Georgia and Clemson, but some pretty bad losses in there as well. Does that warrant them being the 13th best team in the country? I don't think it does.
Again, brand name matters in this thing, man. It just really does. And we always talk about where you're at in the preseason poll gives you a little bit of leeway. Penn State was looked at top 10 preseason, even when they got beat by Ohio State in a game Ohio State controlled. To be fair,
Yeah,
I mean, Penn State didn't really fall a whole lot because they were already so high up thanks to their preseason ranking.
that is something too, and maybe we can get toward Manuel's comments here coming up in a couple minutes. They talk so much about watching games, but what they tell us about teams that they have supposedly watched leads me to believe they aren't actually watching these games.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, did you really watch Penn State play Ohio State? Did you really watch that thing? Okay.
Some of the criteria they use to rank these teams very much screams of box score watching, where you can look at, hey, oh, they only lost by 7, only lost by 3. But if you really watch these games, sometimes it's a little bit of a different story.
I mean, with Alabama, the loss to Oklahoma, a team, South Carolina dismembered Oklahoma in Norman. And then you saw what Oklahoma did to Alabama.
Well,
and you're sitting here thinking Alabama only fell 6 spots with 3 losses? Really?
We knew Oklahoma was bad going into the South Carolina game, but after Carolina beat them, we said, okay, they'll beat Maine, which they did, but we didn't see any other conceivable win on their schedule the rest of this is Oklahoma that we're talking about. We thought they were going to be a 5-7 team watching bowl season from the sidelines, and they went out there and not just beat Alabama, dominated them for 4 quarters.
And that's my point here. If you're watching Alabama play, how can, and again, this is just trying to be objective. If you're watching Alabama play and records matter, after what you saw, and plus they have a loss to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
After what you saw, you're really making them the second team out at 8-3.
They are in, assuming they beat Auburn this weekend, they are in prime position to benefit from more chaos.
Are you valuing the Georgia win that much? Because again, beating Missouri, look, Missouri's in the top 25, but they're not what everybody thought they were going to be. And then the LSU win is losing its luster almost every week.
Yep.
So I mean, this is the team that is the second squad out. No, because their name's Alabama.
It helps.
And they value that Georgia win.
Again, we talk about it's TV show. The ratings matter here, and who's going to draw more ratings, Indiana or Alabama?
Right. Or even Ole Miss or Alabama.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So
it is significant that Alabama is ahead of Ole Miss.
Sure it is. And when you sit and look at this whole thing, Oregon, a pretty big brand, Ohio State, big brand, Texas, big brand, Penn State, big brand, Notre Dame.
And again, if South Carolina beats Clemson this weekend, I can make a strong case that South Carolina should have the opportunity to vault past Alabama. But if they're not, if they still sit behind Alabama and Ole Miss, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm surprised by it.
Oh, I wouldn't be either, because again, at the end of the day, the Gamecocks don't have the brand name recognition of Alabama or what Lane Kiffin has done recently at Ole Miss to give them a little something. Remember, he's the king of the portal and he's Lane Kiffin and all this other stuff. It is a TV show. And like I said, like we said in the opening riff of the show, if South Carolina handles their business and beats Clemson this Saturday, that's a much more impressive win than beating Mississippi State or Auburn.
And look, this doesn't mean that every big brand is going to be in, because you can't drag a dead Michigan team and justify them being in the playoffs. But if you're close, I think what value you are as a brand can put you over the edge.
Agree with you, sir. All right, we will get back here. Here's some Shane Beamer talking about the leadership of the South Carolina football team, and also, do non-South Carolina guys care about this rivalry as we get back to a rivalry week sponsored by our friends at Columbia Craft, Green Street and the Vista. Some Shane next on the halftime show, live from the Nest, 1331 Gadsden, also in the Vista, right here on the game.
as far as injuries. We'll see. Dabo said some of his guys are day to day, some of our guys are day to day. So I know he said one's hour to hour. We probably got one that's hour to hour too.
Well, you don't have to give the injury report. You don't give an injury report. So they got some guys day to day, some guys hour to hour, some guys minute to minute. Well, it just depends. There's your injury report. As we roll from the Nest halftime show, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista.
Listen, if you can play it close to the vest, play it close to the vest.
Hey, you know what? That's the way it goes. They'll all do it. They'll all continue to do it. And I get it. I do. Every little piece of information and intel you think could sway a game one way or the other. And you let somebody know if somebody's not going to play, then they can prepare this way or that way. Make them prepare for everybody, Tyler.
That's right.
That's what you do. All right. And of course, our injury report always sponsored by this Samuel L. Reynolds Law Group. All right, we are at the Nest, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista. Again, cook like a Bosch, clean like a Bosch. Bosch appliances, dishwashers, stoves, ovens. It's just Bosch high quality stuff. And everything here has been Terry proofed. So you can trust me. If I can cook on it, any human being can. So come on out. Plus there's fixtures and lighting. And if you want to upgrade the look of your home or the kitchen of your home, this is the place to be. Also, you can come in. We've had a few folks come in and fill out their little entry forms to get the South Carolina Clemson football tickets. We're going to go to 3. And also you get men's basketball tickets and baseball tickets for Carolina Clemson, but you got to come in and register. This is the only way you can do it. Can't do it online. Can't do it on the internet. Cannot do it on social media. Cannot call in. This is how you do it. And we'll be doing this up until 3. And the drawing will be 7:30 on the early game. So, all right. As we continue to cook football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Let's get a cut here from Shane Beamer real fast, talking about, South Carolina guys, how much they care about the rivalry, even though Shane was quite disappointed that Lenore Sellers wasn't all in on it, being from Florence.
I think there's a fine line.
Oh, hit it.
There we go.
I think there's a fine line. I think they certainly care about the rivalry. I don't think you can be here long without hearing about Clemson. And that's what I think is cool about this rivalry is it's in all sports. I mean, y'all have heard me say it before, probably getting ready to play Clemson. At other places that I've been, they're only really worried about the football game each year and maybe basketball. But here it's like a real big deal when you play them in any sport. And so I don't think it takes long for any new arrival to get here and figure out, the Clemson game at the end of the season is really important to the fan base here at South Carolina and in this state as well. And even if you did just get here, Lenoris may not have grown up watching this game, but this is one that's always on Thanksgiving weekend that people are always one of the rivalry games that people are always tuned into, in my opinion, as well. I want everybody to, play with emotion, play with an edge in any game. But, I think certainly rivalry games, you may not quite realize what it is, but once you get there and experience it and ride in on the bus and walk out there and get out there for pregame warmups, there's just a little bit of a different feel as well. So, but again, get back to just prepare yourself during the week to go play well on Saturday. And then once the game starts, a lot of that goes out the window and it just gets down to playing football and who can play more winning football than the other team.
Yeah, I mean, it's hot and heated. It's a rivalry and it's intense. But once you tee it up and kick it, man, it's a football game. And that's what you got to always remember when you're playing. It's just, once it gets going, it's a football game. Yeah. The intensity level is ratcheted up because it's a rivalry game. And there's an intensity level ratcheted up because this game means a lot, not just in state and the rivalry, but means a lot when you look at the college football playoff picture as well.
It does. And look, there's always that familiarity of guys, in-state guys played against each other, played with each other, and wanting to best those guys that you're so familiar with. That kind of bakes into this rivalry too, that obviously makes it important. Look, the game is important every single year, no matter what, purely from a bragging rights standpoint. But again, we're talking about one of the most important games in the history of this rivalry, where both teams still, based on the structure of the playoff, I think this would be the first time ever both teams went into this game still with a technical shot at making a national championship run should they win.
I mean, there's a lot here. Like, we discussed South Carolina beat Clemson. No matter what Bama or Ole Miss does, you feel like a win over the number 12 team in the college football playoff rankings on the road, where they are favored in the game, would carry more weight than Alabama at home beating Auburn or Ole Miss at home beating Mississippi State
Right.
to vault there. So, and then you say now South Carolina's in the conversation. For Clemson, we've gone over this. Even if they lose, there's a backdoor way to get to the ACC championship game to possibly get yourself in the playoff. But if you win this game, it would be your best W of the season. You beat the number 15 team in the college football playoff ranking from the SEC. Now you got a little something, and that might help you if more chaos ensues. So both teams have a lot going on here for Saturday in the upstate. And, and we look at this football game, Tyler, and one of the things I think for South Carolina is the emergence out of nowhere of our boy Campbell at wide receiver. What Dale Von Campbell has done in the last 2 weeks is unreal.
It's been a welcome surprise. And again, it's not like we're saying he's the superstar wide receiver of this group necessarily, but what we've seen these past couple weeks is something that we hoped we were going to see with him when he came in, because he kind of checked that box of something we knew that, Coach Beamer and staff were looking for in the offseason, that taller guy to be able to line up on the outside that we knew Carolina needed with both Xavier Legette and Juice Wells departing this past offseason. And, he'd made a couple of catches through the first handful of games, but hadn't really done anything of note. And like you said, the past 2 weeks, he has absolutely exploded on the scene.
Well, and he had a 50-yarder call back against Wofford that would have made his numbers even more sick on Saturday. And if you want to say, well, it's Wofford, Terry, okay, well, how about the two big catch and run yak plays he made at the end of the Missouri game? If Campbell doesn't make those plays, you don't win the game. And look, if you can get production from Campbell, Nick Harbor the last couple of weeks has really started to make some plays. Now your receiving room is starting to look a little different, my man.
Well, and I think it's important to note, and Coach Beamer obviously didn't touch on it because he didn't have to, because you don't have to release an injury report. We know Brady Hunt is not going to play this upcoming weekend. We'll see about Josh Simon. He sat out this past weekend to be, extra careful and precautionary against Wofford. You don't know how healthy your tight end room is as of right now. So that's kind of been a big part of your pass game, especially with Josh Simon. What if you don't have those guys? What if Michael Smith is out once again as well, and you have to rely on your receivers to make catches? It's going to be interesting to see who steps up.
Well, the tight end, you mean that's your leading receiver in Josh Simon. So yeah, that's kind of important to have him on the field. But look what Lenore Sellers did last week without Simon. Still threw for over 300 yards. I know, ready? It's against Wofford. I get it. But coming into this week, Josh Simon's your leading receiver. Mazeo Bennett's number 2. Rocket Sanders is number 3. But what we've seen here lately is contributions from Nick Harbor, Dale Von Campbell, Gage Larvadain, Jared Brown. A lot of guys who either have been injured or haven't been around really to do a whole lot of stuff now have picked up their game in the last couple of weeks. And Lenore Sellers, out of everyone, look how efficient and effective he is throwing the football right now. And then if you can throw it, how good could Rocket Sanders be? Because you're not loading the box to stop the run game. And also, how's that open up your quarterback running the football with Lenore Sellers?
Again, it all seems to be gelling at the right time.
How about that? All right, we'll come back here live from the Nest. We're Bosching. It's all about the Bosch. We'll talk more about that coming back. But also football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. A lot of Thanksgiving football, Tyler, in the NFL. A lot of it could put you to sleep like tryptophan. We'll talk about it next here on the Halftime Show, live from the Nest in the Vista on the Game.
your source for Weber, Traeger, and Big Green Egg Grills. Quality patio furniture and hot spring spas. 3303 Forest Drive and JackOliverPools.com.
What could lead to a lot of grill of the game, one side or the other, here on the halftime shows. We were hanging out here live at the Nest 1331 Gadsden, is offensive line.
It's
The
important.
Clemson both offensive lines. I mean, we always talk about winning the battle up front because that's obviously you win the line of scrimmage. A lot of times you win the game, obviously. And this is for both teams. Which offensive line, can open up holes in the run game, can protect their quarterbacks. It's obviously very important. And for Clemson, their offensive line has been banged up. When healthy, Cade Klubnik has only been pressured on roughly 30% of his throws. They've run the ball really well. So the offensive line has held up nicely for Clemson. But again, there's been some injury issues across that offensive line. And here's Tiger head coach Dabo Swinney talking about that banged up offensive line.
We've done outstanding. We've won. We're 3-0 with a hodgepodge. So, they've just all stepped up. Like I said, Blake Miller hasn't played left tackle since high school, and all of a sudden he's had to go and start and play, 2 basically full games at left tackle. It's been good. Trent Howard has really saved us. He's come through for us once again. I guess he's just our November savior. It's two years in a row he's had to really step up. Harris Sewell, same thing. But we came into this season really feeling great about our depth. We felt, and it's come through for us. We needed it. Because we looked at the 5 guys that started the season, and Sadler and Harris and Trent is guys that have all starter experience, and that wasn't even counting Linthicum. So it's really saved us, that type of depth, because we're not just feeling. These guys have played and they got experience. Harris started some games last year, got a ton of experience. Obviously, Trent and his experience last year helped his confidence. The biggest challenge was at tackle, and then especially with, because we felt really good about tackle. So we played Mason earlier in the year, and then we're down to 1 game. So trying to hold him to give us another good option. So they've done a nice job.
Yeah, their offensive line, like I said, has been solid. Pass protection in, running the football. So South Carolina, which gets after quarterbacks, we shall see who wins that battle. If you look at pressures allowed by Clemson this year, if you want to zero in on someone, Blake Miller's given up 13 pressures at tackle. Tristan Lee's given up 14 pressures. Ryan Linthicum, the center, leads the way, though, with 22 given up. And Walker Parks at guard has given up 19. So when Walker Parks is playing. So you got a couple of guys you can zero in on. You see the center guard situation, well, maybe the interior of your defensive line regarding pass rush. Look, TJ Sanders is an excellent interior pass rusher. He will be putting his hand down the dirt in the NFL because of his ability to rush the passer. So TJ Sanders could be big. Tonka Hemingway getting some heat on Cade Klubnik. No quarterback likes pass rush in their face. You talk to any quarterback, they'd rather be ducking and dodging the guys coming off the edge where they can step up, because if the pressure's coming right in your grill from the interior, you got nowhere to go. You can't step up. You got to try to get out. So that might be a big matchup in this game. The interior of the South Carolina defensive line in the pass rush game versus the middle of the Clemson offensive line in the pass rush, in the pass protection game. So there's again, Dabo Swinney discussing the issue with the offensive line with health. And of course, just this defense in general this year, they big plays, forcing turnovers. Clemson doesn't turn the ball over. Shane brought it up with a 3rd in the country in turnover margin. They don't turn the rock over too much. So, but neither did Vanderbilt. And remember, the turning point of the Vandy game was Kyle Kennard, his strip sack of Diego Pavia after Lenore Sellers had fumbled. Vandy was set up really nice in South Carolina territory. Kennard came in, smacked the ball out of Pavia's hand and recovered it. And that was a huge turning point of that game. So, yeah, South Carolina forced a turnover against a Vanderbilt team that did not give away the rock. So we'll see what South Carolina can do defensively. to get some disruption, some pass rush. Remember, this is the best defense that Clemson will face since the Georgia game. And the Georgia game, Clemson was embarrassed. Let's just be honest. So how better has Clemson gotten since then on the offensive side of the ball? We're going to see, because South Carolina's going to come after you. And what did Clemson what did they pull from the Missouri game? Missouri ran the ball really well because again, Eli Drinkwitz said, that those two plays keep working, just keep running until South Carolina stops them. Can Garrett Riley be that disciplined, the offensive coordinator of Clemson? Because look, as much as we like to pick on Eli Drinkwitz, because he's Eli Drinkwitz. He's a good play caller and he's got a good offensive mind, as annoying as he can be. But I don't know if Garrett Riley could be that patient and just say, look, that play's working, we're going to keep running it. A lot of these highly paid offensive coordinators, they like to show you how smart they are. And sometimes something will work, but they'll go away from it because, again, they want to break out the Denny's menu and start, rolling the plays. So can Clemson take what Missouri did in the run game in the second half and use it incorporate it in what they do in their run system? And two, if it does work, will they stick with it? I don't know. We'll find out because again, Clemson's run game is different from Missouri's, just in the way they do things. Their running backs are different in their style and their talents. But what can Clemson take from the success Missouri had running the football? That'll be interesting. So we'll see. On the South Carolina side of it, defensively, Missouri run the ball in the second half. That's the first time South Carolina's really been knocked off the ball for any long period of time versus the run. Now, they've given up some running yards. I mean, Kentucky, Tyler went down the field on them.
Yeah.
On that one drive, but then went away from it. All of a sudden, Kentucky got behind too, and they just totally abandoned the run.
Yeah, and I know. So Carolina's got the third best run defense in the SEC. Those numbers get a little skewed because you gave up so few to Wofford and Akron a little bit earlier on in the season, as well as Oklahoma. Since then, in the other games, they did give up at least 100 yards to pretty much everybody else. So that's not like totally egregious. I do look back to a couple weeks ago with what Nate Noel did with Missouri, and that gives you a little reason for concern because you have a guy in Phil Maffa that can certainly hurt you in similar type of ways, though he is dealing with that banged up offensive line.
Yeah, so we'll find out what the deal is, right? I mean, with an offensive line that does have some, what did Dabo call it? Mixing and mismashing or whatever the heck he said. Hodgepodge, that's what it was. Yeah, we'll find out because, again, this is the best offensive line. This is the best defensive front that they faced since Georgia. Active, mean, nasty, ornery. And then rushing the passer, too. I mean, Cade Klubnik has not been pressured a whole lot. We'll see what happens if Carolina can get some heat on him and see if we can maybe force a turnover or force a bad decision. We'll find out there as well, my man. We shall see, sir.
We absolutely will.
All right, Firehouse Sub text the hour, 803-404-6100. We'll get that in and check our Twitter X poll of the day as well. It's a halftime show live from the Nest. Gadsden in the Vista. Cook like a Bosch, clean like a Bosch. Bosch appliances all over the place. Also lighting fixtures, all sorts of good stuff. We'll be here till 3 and your chance to register for Carolina Clemson football, baseball, men's basketball tickets. All happening till 3 right here on the game.
That is it, folks. It is a football up in the air. The streak is over. Carolina has number 7. Clemson rivalry week on the game is sponsored by Columbia Craft. From the Midlands to the beach, the Game Network and the 107.5 The Game app.
Halftime show live from the Nest, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista in Columbia. Coming out, check out all the great Bosch appliances and dishwashers, and stoves, and ovens, refrigerators. You know, we were trying to talk Nikki into this test drive a tub thing, and we might have something here.
Oh, she's actually on board with it. They're
Yeah,
actually on board with
she
it.
might be down with this, bud. Might be
Um,
down with this. We're
now,
working on it.
who has to clean the tub afterwards is probably the better
Well,
question.
Jeff would have to clean the tub, obviously.
Oh, of course.
I mean, I think it would help. I think it would help Jeff with some of his life issues we've been going over here on the show.
Well, now we're just getting personal. I didn't need to know all that.
You know, we're trying to help Jeff kind of get back to being his old self.
Well, it sounds like he needs the men's clinic.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with me. I think we could get Jeff back to being him again.
Exactly.
Yeah,
they do.
because he just hasn't been him lately. So that's our job. So he
There-
can cleaning the tub would cleanse him on the inside. by cleaning the tub.
Therapy with Terry,
I'm just here to help, Dr. Ford.
or therapy as we like to call it.
Therapy. That's. Oh my God. All right, we are hanging here at the Vista, 1331 Gadsden from the Nest, talking a ton about the rivalry game with Carolina Clemson. You know, we were discussing this, Tyler, about maybe the place to attack Clemson in the pass rush could be in the interior, because the two offensive linemen that give the most pressures for the Tigers are, in the interior of their O-line. TJ Sanders is third on the team in pressures with 28.
Mhm.
Behind Kyle Kennard with 36. Dylan Stewart leads the team with 45 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. Even though Stewart has not gotten home as much as Kennard, still 45 pressures for Dylan Stewart. Kennard has 36 at this point. Tonka Hemingway has 21. So, again, you have some guys from the interior that also bring heat.
And I know we like to focus so much on the stats of getting sacks and tackles for losses, stuff like that, but you see what putting those pressure on you see the effect that putting pressure on quarterbacks has, forcing them into bad throws, moving them out their spots, forcing them into making mistakes, which, again, Cade Klubnik better this year, but he's somebody that Ian last year spent a lot of the season making a lot of mistakes, putting the ball in harm's way quite a bit, that if you get enough pressure on him, he's under 45% when he's pressured, you can force him into making some mistakes again.
And that's what you're hoping for. You're hoping for pressure equaling bad decisions, equaling mistakes, hopefully could equal maybe a turnover or two before it's all said and done, even though Clemson has done a much better job this year in valuing and protecting the football on offense.
Right.
All right, Firehouse Sub text the hour, 803-404-6100. We got, man.
Harry weighs in and says, we had it right in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Go back to 1 versus 2 in bowl games, meaning something. Hashtag should have never changed. And I want to get your perspective on this, because I've grown up in an era where there's always been a national championship game, whether it be BCS or the college football playoff in the past decade. It almost kind of blows my mind. And look, I'm a history buff when it comes to college football and learning about, past systems of turning national championships and stuff like that. It's insane to me to think that number 1 and number 2 spent so many years just never seeing each other, and we go, okay, let's let this committee of writers decide who the national championships is. Oh, by the way, we have 7 national champions this year. Congratulations, everyone. Go hang a banner.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the stuff that went on back in the old days, like before I was born. It's just like, it's the Agricultural Farm Bureau National Championship. Really? Okay.
Well,
the Reader's Digest National Champion
had a poll.
Yes.
Everybody had a poll.
Yes. It was like the Farmer's Almanac National Champion
listen,
is.
Look, I'm not knocking Alabama's accomplishment, but go back and look at some of their claimed national championships. It's one obscure poll from a committee of writers down the street at the Tuscaloosa News, I'm sure. They claim them as national champions. They're like, heck yeah, we'll hang a banner for that.
Yeah, and look, Harry, God love you. I get what you're saying. You want 1 versus 2 for the regular season to be what it used to be. And that was the poll, it was the AP and the coaches, and you got the number 1 and number 2 and the BCS. And I get it. Maybe if you want to go back to computer and just pick the top 2, I understand where he's coming from. But you know what? I like this. You know why I like this? Because right now, 20-some different fan bases are talking about the possible scenarios to get in the playoffs.
And I understand where Harry's coming from too. And there's a lot of people that I know that are old school college football fans that wish we just decided national championships with polls, because that's what we did for over 100 years. And we're always inclined to think that the old way is always better. But if we were starting college football from scratch right now and we didn't have to adhere to bowls or anything like that, we would have a structured playoff format similar to what we have now to determine a champion, because that's what every other level of football does.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just you want to have something that makes sense. But remember, college football has been built on the think system for so long, Tyler, that's the way people just it's ingrained, right? And everybody likes what was going on when they were growing up or back in their day. It's just near and dear to their heart, and they just like that. There are older people who grew up through that era of the writers voting for a national champion, the coaches, and they go, man, I miss those days. That was the days, man, when they didn't settle it on the field. They settle it with votes. And you look up and go, really?
Well, and
I don't like that.
And again, I just can't fathom ending your season playing in the Sugar Bowl or the Cotton Bowl or whatever it is. I'm like, all right, let's wait 5 days to see if they think we're the best team in the country or not. Like, that's just crazy to me.
It is. I mean, look, it was the only sport that you weren't settling it on the field. And it just makes no sense. And then you go with the BCS, whether it's the computer doing it or you've got AP and coaches poll giving you the top two. I like this because, again, this is not only is this fun and it gives us something to talk about, just like the old days, but now you truly are going to settle it by winning games, right? Not just winning one game or even two. Now you're truly going through a playoff model that the playoffs become a thing, right? So, I mean, again, this has been more fun than I ever thought it would be this year. All right, what's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. It's Rivalry Week, sponsored by Columbia Craft. We are live at the Nest in the Vista. We'll talk more about all the cool stuff going on here between now and 3 on the game. Oh, just hanging out here at the Nest, 1331 Gadsden, the Vista, Terry Ford. We're here till 3. Tyler head back at Mission Control. Jeannie's here, Jeff's here, Nikki Graham. We're just chilling. I'm working on this whole test drive a tub.
Let me know
Maybe
how
we got
that
something
goes.
here. I'm working on it. Maybe for the next live broadcast.
You know, I don't
Test
think
drive
I
a
don't
tub.
think the Nest is aware of the repercussions that brings.
The mental picture's hilarious, though, isn't it?
I
It's
don't
just-
need that mental picture, Terry. Personally, you know.
Oh.
Do you remember the Miley Cyrus wrecking ball
Yes.
video, and that became like a trend for a while for people to sit naked on like gigantic like ball structures or whatever.
Mhm.
I feel like this is going to have a similar effect. Are people just going to want to go down there and test drive hot dubs because Terry Ford made it cool? And I don't think Nest wants that.
Yeah, then the people showing up with their towels and that could be a thing. That could be a lot of fun.
Oh.
And might have a creepy factor that we'll never get out of our head too.
No, not at all. I've already gone too far.
All right, let's try to get to sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Obviously, though, we've been talking a ton about Rivalry Week, sponsored by Columbia Craft. South Carolina traveling upstate to face Clemson. Again, Clemson is favored. I feel like South Carolina is playing better of the two at this point. We'll see how it goes. Evenly matched are these two squads. So we've been talking about it. We'll continue on in that conversation, obviously today and then on Friday. Thanksgiving, football, the NFL tomorrow, Tyler. I ain't going to lie to you. Yuck. I mean, to be fair, let me be fair. I mean, the Cowboys and the Giants, that is like tryptophan for your eyeballs. That game is going to be hideous and awful. Now, the Bears-Lions have a little potential for something. The Bears they've been finding a way to lose close games lately that have been kind of exciting. And the Lions, obviously, to me, are the best team in the NFC, maybe even in football. So maybe the Bears can make this a track meet for a little while before the Lions would pull away.
Yeah, so here's my thing. The Bears have found a way to lose tight games to good teams the past couple weeks. So my intrigue for that game is, okay, how are they going to lose at the last second in regulation or overtime to this Lions team?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the fun part of that. And look, I'm going to say this. I questioned, I know it's only been 2 weeks, so let's couch it there. When Chicago, because look, Matt Eberflus is trying to save his job. He's be honest here.
Of course.
So he kicks Shane Waldron, who is not even through his first year as the offensive coordinator, to the curb, promotes Thomas Brown, who Thomas Brown was at South Carolina for a bit as a coach assistant. But his resume as an offensive coordinator, a play caller in the NFL has been nothing special. And I said, look, you just plugged the dude in. You made a move to make a move because you're trying to save your job. But, for 2 weeks, it's kind of worked. Caleb Williams has played much better since Thomas Brown took over as the offensive coordinator. How much of that is Thomas Brown? I don't know. But I know this, it has gotten better for 2 weeks. So, even though I was like, yeah, you're just moving a dude in there because you got to throw bodies in front of the train before they get you, Eberflus. The Thomas Brown, Caleb Williams thing, it's for 2 weeks has been all right. So I'll give him props for that. But yeah, I mean, eventually the Lions will find a way to pull away. And Cowboys, Giants ready? Who cares? There's my prediction. Who cares? Right? Nobody cares. I mean, this game is between two. You know what I think's funny, Tyler? Because again, ESPN's job is to talk about the Cowboys like every 5 minutes. They actually threw out, could the Cowboys make the playoffs now? They upset the Commanders. Okay. They'll probably beat the Giants and be 5-7, but you really think they're going to like almost run the table? Stop.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. Technically, mathematically, I guess they're not eliminated, but I'll go ahead and count them out myself.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now. I mean, now they'll lose the Eagles, lose the Buccaneers, lose to the Bengals. The Panthers might even get them in Carolina, to be quite honest. I feel good for Bryce Young, even in a loss, the way Young played against a really good Kansas City defense for Carolina.
And if you need any reassurance as a Cowboys fan, Jerry Jones throwing out the possibility of bringing Mike McCarthy back should get you really excited.
But who should be surprised about that?
Nobody.
I mean, look how long Jason Garrett hung on. Jason Garrett, I think, was the head coach. I'm doing this off the top of my head. That doesn't work as well. 9 years, I think Jason Garrett was the head coach. He made the playoffs 3 times.
Jason Garrett was the coach for 9 years, and his facial expression never changed one time.
No, it did not. Neither did his hair. I mean, just Jerry Jones likes to keep coaches for a long time because Jerry Jones doesn't want a real head coach. I mean, Mike McCarthy's the closest thing to a real head coach he's had since he got Bill Parcells.
And look, everybody immediately brings up Bill Belichick and hey, he should go be the Cowboys head coach. There is too many egos in the room for that because Jerry Jones wants a coach that he can pull the strings of and manipulate like a marionette, like he's been doing for years and years and years. He had the best head coach in Cowboys, or I guess second best head coach in Cowboys history behind Tom Landry and Jimmy Johnson, and he could not wait to run him out of town despite the Super Bowls.
Yeah, exactly. Because Jerry has a room in his house for his ego. Look, they brought in Bill Parcells just to get the funding for the stadium for Jerry World. That's the only reason that Bill Parcells was brought in, and Jerry drove Bill Parcells nuts, and Parcells had to leave. No real head coach that wants to have any kind of control at all is going to go there. Bill Belichick's not doing it. It's not going to happen. Not in a million years.
No. And I think Bill Belichick's well aware of that. And look, Robert Kraft, as controversial as he may be off the field, knew what he had in Bill Belichick, and he got the heck out of his way and let him do what he needed to do. And that's why they were so successful for so long with him and Tom Brady and all that kind of stuff. Jerry Jones can't remove himself from the Cowboys operation to let that happen in Dallas.
And even if you go by this, okay, let's take a really weird road. Let's say Bill Belichick, because remember, Bill Belichick didn't get any legit offers in the offseason to be a head coach.
Nope.
At all. So let's say that Bill Belichick goes into this next offseason after being everywhere, right? He's on the Manning cast. He has his own podcast. He's on Pat McAfee. Bill Belichick is trying to show the world he has a personality, right? And he's trying to kind of make himself over because he feels like, and his agent feels like, Bill, you got to get out there and show you're a human being and not a robot who never takes a shower.
You have to show that you can find joy in something.
Exactly. So, but let's say despite Bill's best efforts to remake himself on TV, it still doesn't work, and he doesn't get an offer but one, Dallas. And someone's going to say, well, Bill wants to get in so bad, he'll take that job. No, I don't think he will. Here's why. He doesn't have to. Sooner or later, someone besides the Dallas Cowboys will offer Bill Belichick a head coaching gig. That will happen at some point.
Yeah, I agree with you. He might have to wait another year or so, but his name is always going to be towards the top. And again, he didn't get any hard looks as much as you thought he would this past offseason. It seems like Atlanta was the closest thing, and obviously we ended up going with Raheem Morris. But somebody, whoever ends up firing their head coach next, maybe it's Jacksonville, I don't know, is going to be willing to give him a shot if they want to go that direction.
Well, and the other part of this, look, I think Bill, because this happens all the time in TV. You go into TV, and if you can show, if you're TV friendly in any way, shape, or form, show some personality, and people, obviously the X's and O's are so easy for Belichick, it's ridiculous, but if he shows he's actually a human being with real feelings and thoughts and all these other things, TV always rehabilitates these guys.
Yep.
How many times have you seen a dude get another job because he was on TV for a couple years? It happens all the time.
It seems to happen every year in college football.
Yes. So Belichick will be back. He doesn't need to take the Cowboy job out of desperation. And Jerry Jones wants no part of a control freak like Belichick. I can see McCarthy coming back. Look, 3 straight years they won 12 games and made the playoffs.
Yep.
This year, does McCarthy get blamed for the way this team sometimes looks like they have been half interested? Sure. But the GM, Jerry Jones, did not go out and get the pieces they needed in the offseason to make this team better because Jerry Jones, the capologist, has screwed up the cap on this football team. So, no one's saying Mike McCarthy doesn't get blamed, but there's a lot bigger problems there than Mike McCarthy, to be quite honest with you. It's just Jerry will not move off of McCarthy because he wants someone he can do the Muppet thing with. He wants to be, he wants to be Jim Henson. So that game is going to be terrible.
And Mike McCarthy is thankful to continue to be employed.
Yes. And we forget something. Mike McCarthy actually is a Super Bowl winning head coach.
He is.
We forget this.
Well, here's the thing. And this is always going to be the debate of Mike McCarthy, unless he goes out there and proves us otherwise. Was it Mike McCarthy or was it Aaron Rodgers?
Well, here's the thing, ready? Aaron Rodgers, they've only won 1 Super Bowl together. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl.
They have, but they still made multiple championship games even after McCarthy left.
So I look at it this way. I think that Green Bay's a machine in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
I believe that, I thought, well, I'm not bought in on Jordan Love yet, but I think Green Bay has a certain way that they roll, and they make really good decisions and smart decisions. And Matt LaFleur's been a really good. Look how good of a team Green Bay is without Aaron. I thought how much of Green Bay's success was it Matt LaFleur or was it Aaron Rodgers? Well, they're still successful without Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
Matt LaFleur's just a really good football coach. I think Mike McCarthy was a good football coach. Now, am I going to rank him among the greatest of all time? No. But I think he's a good football coach. I think his in-game decision making sometimes is awful. But again, unless you're Barry Switzer, you can't be a terrible head coach and win a Super Bowl in the NFL. You've got to be at least solid. I think
Sure.
McCarthy's fine. I just think that when you take the head job in Dallas, you're automatically going to end up getting collateral spray on you because of the egomaniac owner.
Well, and look, Mike McCarthy's not exactly the most bombastic personality either. And being in Green Bay obviously carries a lot of weight with it too, but it's a different level. I mean, literally, they talk about Dallas, whether they're relevant or not, on every national talk show every single day, good or bad. You are constantly in the spotlight, and Mike McCarthy doesn't really seem like the guy that enjoys that kind of thing too much.
No, and that's why he works perfect there too, because Jerry can blather all day long, and McCarthy's not going to get in the way, right? He just isn't. He's fine. He's almost fine with Jones doing this, and that's another reason why I think there's a good chance he comes back.
Which again, you know what you're signing up for, taking that head coaching job, so he was clearly okay with it.
Yeah, and look, Mike McCarthy's won 36 games in that circus in 3 years. The only other head coach in the Jerry Jones era to do that was Jimmy Johnson. I just think that McCarthy, there are some things McCarthy does that are so head scratching that we forget that he does win a lot of games as head coach. It's just he hasn't won in the playoffs in Dallas. And that's really the biggest problem is they've gotten to the postseason and coaching, players, all of it. I mean, let's face it. They've been punched in the face in the McCarthy era in the postseason. That's a thing.
Yep.
And really that's the biggest knock on McCarthy in Dallas. He can't win the postseason, and that goes to the players and the owner and everybody. So that game's going to be a snooze. Miami and Green Bay might be fun. You got two teams that might be able to move the ball up and down the field. We might get some offense. We might get some fireworks. That to me, that's an interesting game in Green Bay.
Yeah.
If it's not 40 below.
Yeah, nightcap there. Obviously, the Miami offense has clicked back into gear now that Tua is at the helm, and obviously, the Packers are essentially kind of vying for a wild card spot at this point in time. But that one has the best potential of being a fun game.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the weather, because South Florida folks don't travel really well into the frozen tundra.
Let's take a look at what Miami did in the frozen tundra of Kansas City last year in the playoffs. Yes. Not a whole lot.
Oh, absolutely not. So that game, if the weather is okay, that might be a fun one to watch.
We'll
see.
We can't see Mike. We can't see Mike McDaniel's cool outfit if he's bundled up.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's a dude. Wow, Miami's much better in that offense. Mike McDaniel's a guru again. I wonder why.
Yeah, because he has his quarterback. Sorry, Skylar Thompson. You're not exactly fit to run this offense the same way that Tua is.
Yeah, and you got the name Skylar.
Yeah,
that should be better with that name.
That knocks you a few points down.
Yeah, Skylar. How many great quarterbacks are named Skylar?
Can't think of any.
I can't either. We are hanging here live at the Nest, 1331 in the Vista, and on Gadsden in the Vista. We're going to talk with our buddy Graham, who I believe is now available to hang out with us and yap about all the great values and the great specials and all the cool things going on here at the Nest. We will do that coming up here in the next segment. And we'll continue on back with our Rivalry Week talk with Carolina Clemson. It is the halftime show. You can come in here to the Nest and you can register to win tickets for the game Saturday in the Upstate with South Carolina Clemson. Also, Carolina Clemson men's basketball tickets and Carolina Clemson baseball tickets. Pop on in here to do that. We're here till 3 right here on the game. Oh, hanging out here, halftime show. Terry Ford from the Nest, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista in Columbia. Can't miss. We got all our station vehicles out front. You can't miss us. Let's see. Terry Ford, we're hanging here. Tyler back at Mission Control, keeping us on the air. Jeff's here. We're trying to solve a lot of his life issues. Jeannie's here as well. Nikki, our buddy Graham here. Man, I'm telling you, all I'm doing is watching you walk customers around.
That's the way you try to take care of all of them, for sure.
Nice job. That was good work by you. You even I was impressed with you knew their background. Like you told the one guy, back when you were 14 years old, it was pretty impressive how much research you do on these.
Yeah, been doing this a while, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the cool thing about it, we talk about it all the time here. You got all the Bosch stuff, which is the latest in wow, gear, whether it's appliances, dishwashers, stoves, ovens. And we talk about all the experience you guys have here. You've been doing this since we looked up Wikipedia. You built the first refrigerator.
Not quite, but I think I saw it one time. No, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been in Columbia the entire time. And yes, this is one of those jobs that once it gets its hooks in you, it never lets go.
So it's like, you're addicted.
I'm stuck.
You're stuck. That's another way to
stuck.
put it.
Yes.
No, you're saying, I love what I do so much. I'm enthralled every day. Yeah, like you, I'm stuck.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, you have a ton of experience here with you and with Nikki and the others here who they know this stuff inside out. And I always joke about it, but I'm not. It's like you walk into another place and you got some 19-year-old who just got hired because he only makes $12 an hour for beer money and he couldn't tell, a Bosch appliance from, a can opener.
We are definitely not order takers, for sure.
No,
yeah. And on the appliance side, like it or not, appliances will break. It's gonna happen.
I've heard that.
So when customers come in the showroom and talk to me, that's essentially how I'm trying to direct them. Which brands are going to hit their budget and hopefully give them the least amount of problems. That's the forefront of every recommendation I make.
And because I always talk about how cool this place is. Like I said, I could hang here in this kitchen every day. Give me if you could hook me up with a sleeping bag, I could live here. Because this is, it's a fantastic showroom. It's just phenomenal. And we always say the call, if someone is looking for appliances, come give you a call. Just kind of get the basics, what they're looking for, the vision, the price, their budget. But once they come in, you got to be hooked. Once you come in here, it's fantastic.
Maybe so. The folks I was helping earlier, their builder called me last night, said, this is the budget. They're coming in to see you. Okay, we hit the budget. They came in. They wanted to upgrade some things, and they're not terribly over budget at all, but they're getting what they want, and they're not stuck to a budget, which is how we try to do it.
And really, people they need to set an appointment to come in and sit down with you.
We certainly do take walk-ins, but to get the experience that we try to give to each and every customer, appointments are certainly recommended, but not required.
So you have the appliances, but I see lights and you got fixtures, and we're working on this whole, test drive a tub promotion.
Test drive
a tub. Just come in and test drive a tub.
Sure.
You like that?
We got water to some. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But talk about some of the other things that go on here besides you. You are the guru of appliance. You're the grand poobah of appliances, but you have other stuff going on around here.
We do plumbing, lighting, and appliances. How we differentiate ourselves is you've got individual specialists to work with. I'm the appliance guy. I've been doing it for 20 years. Service is kind of my background. Mandy has been doing lighting for ever. She owned her own company. I didn't know this. There's a mathematical formula as to how much light it's supposed to give off based on the room it is and the square footage of the room.
My head just exploded.
Yeah, exactly. Rachel and Brian, they handle the plumbing. We can get all brands. We can hit all price points. But the takeaway is you've got an individual specialist to work with, as opposed to a jack of all trades, master and none. Well, we are not order takers. We're here to educate you.
All right. What's the phone number if somebody wants to give you a holler and find out more?
You can call us here at the showroom, 803-978-2025. We ask for Mandy or Margaret for lighting, Rachel or Brian for plumbing, and myself or Brian for appliances.
You let somebody else do appliances besides you?
Can't do it all. I wish I could. But sometimes even I have to squeal uncle. What can I say?
My friend, we appreciate you like always. Thanks for
appreciate
jumping
you.
on and hanging out here with us. And by the way, I made some brownies. Have one.
One more thing, if you don't mind, Terry.
Mhm.
I've talked to several people today, and I just wanted to say, go Cox and go Canes.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Good move by you,
You like
sir.
that?
I like that. Thank you, Graham.
Thank
Go
you, buddy.
Cox, go Canes. Thank you very much. All right, we are hanging here live in the Vista at the Nest 1331. Gadsden, like I said, just give those folks a call. They're experts. They know what's up in each department. They will put you with someone who will help you, your vision in your budget here at the Nest. All right, 803-404-6100. We'll grab a call real quick, Tyler. I think Chris has been holding on if he's still there. Thank you, my man. Chris, thanks for calling the halftime show on the game. What's up? Appreciate your patience.
Oh, absolutely. I was looking at the Clemson message board last night, which is not my common practice, but anyway,
Okay.
there was a very well laid out comment about our limited chances up there, and that our defense hasn't seen an offense like theirs, and why the Clemson fans shouldn't be worried about our defense. And he made some good points. But then I decided to look up the defensive rankings and the offensive rankings on the internet, and ESPN and 247 Sports. I mean, reputable people who do these kinds of lists. And the highest ranked defense that Clemson has played so far has been Georgia, which I think is right now around 6. I'm not sure. But the rest of them didn't make the top 50.
Nope. You are correct, sir. Very nice work by you, Chris. You are right.
And further, they were talking about how lame our offense was. And so I looked at, and of course, we just had the defenses that they've played. And we've played, I think, 5, maybe 6 of the top defenses in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes, sir.
we have a winning record. So I just thought that, he made some awfully good points, but I thought that kind of knocked some holes in.
Yeah, I think, Chris, you did. There's no doubt. Thanks for the call, my man. I appreciate it. And thanks for your patience. Yeah, Chris is right. I mean, you look at the resume of the team South Carolina has played in the ranks of offense and defense.
Well,
yes.
And again, when you look at Clemson playing Virginia and Virginia Tech and things like that, Florida State compared to playing Georgia and Louisville, there's a bit of a difference. Now, again, they still have won 9 games, which credit to them for doing that, because that's not easy no matter what conference you're in. But when they've played the tougher opponents, there's definitely been a different team that we've seen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when you go look at rankings and ratings and efficiency numbers and all that, yeah, South Carolina's played, so they play a little bit tougher crew than Clemson's gone up against.
How many opponents does South Carolina currently have in the top 25 right now? Quite a few.
Yes. And Clemson, well, that's another conversation. All right. Greatest day in the history of the world. That's coming up. Also, Rivalry Week will continue on here from the Nest in the Vista right here on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game. Oh, it's time for the greatest day in the history of the world, live from the Nest, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista. You have about another 24 minutes to register to win tickets to go see South Carolina Clemson this Saturday. Also, South Carolina Clemson men's basketball, South Carolina Clemson baseball.
And in
Tyler,
20,
you're running out of
25
time.
minutes, Terry will be testing out the tub as he's teased the entire show. Or wait, I can't
If-
see you anymore. Are you actually in the tub right now? Is that why you turned your camera off?
Yeah, I turned the camera off because myself and Jeff and Jeannie and I are all
Oh.
we're all
We're-
test
we're-
driving tubs.
Listen, we're a PG product. We got to think of
That's
the
right.
think of the viewer here.
Yeah, that's right. we don't want to scar the viewer for life.
This is a family show.
That's right. All right, greatest day in the history of the world. Our old school one, 1947. Howie Dalmar of the Philadelphia Warriors set an NBA record. Most field goal attempts in one game without making a field goal. 0 for 15 was Howie in a loss to the Knicks. Now, Howie actually was a heck of a player in college who played for Stanford when they won the NCAA championship in 1942. Howie played 3 or 4 years in the NBA, then became a coach. Went back to his alma mater eventually at Stanford, and get this, Tyler, coached the Stanford Cardinal for 21 years.
Wow.
So this guy actually had something going on, but part of his
did-
resume is going 0 for 15.
Do you think his players in practice when he was coaching at Stanford, was like, hey, work on this part of your shot or get your elbow in? They're like, Coach, didn't you go 0 for 15 in a game one time?
Hey, Coach, let's see your shot so we can do the opposite. What do you say, Coach? Yeah, Howie Dalmar, 0 for 15 in an NBA game back in 1947. All right, a couple quick ones here. Gordie Howe, the legendary, people say the greatest hockey player of all time. Gordie Howe, 1960, scores 1,000th point. 1961, played in his 1,000th game. And in 1965, scored 600 goals. All were milestones for NHL players at the time. Again, Gordie Howe, they say, in a game, will get an assist, score a goal, and punch somebody in the face.
Yeah, it's a Howe hat trick. And, that happened back in the early 60s, and he proceeded to play hockey for another 60 years.
Play with his grandkids, I think. 2011, Connecticut women's basketball team won their 89th straight game, which is piling up their record. 2016, Baltimore Ravens kicker Justin Tucker makes 4 field goals, including 3 from plus 50 yards, 1 of 57, and Baltimore beat Cincinnati 19-14. Tucker made 34 consecutive field goals at one point.
Those would have been very valuable last Sunday or the previous Sunday against Pittsburgh, huh?
Yeah, when he missed the 47 and 50 or whatever. Yeah. And when he missed a field goal, like everyone's in shock.
I know it's like Haley's Comet. You remember where you were when you saw it.
It's crazy.
By the way,
I was
going to say he hit the game-winning field goal to put Texas over A&M the last time those two teams played back in 2011.
An undrafted free agent out of Texas. And by the way, he sings opera. All right, last thing real quick. I wanted to grab this as Thanksgiving Day piece of history. Dave Williams of the Chicago Bears back in 1980 returned the opening kickoff of overtime, 95 yards for a touchdown as the Bears beat the Lions on Thanksgiving. The Bears, by the way, tied the game in regulation with no time left. So the Lions were that close to winning that game, and then not only lost on the last play of regulation to force overtime, but then lost on the kickoff return. There's your greatest day in the history of the world, which is the 27th of November on the game. All right. College football playoff rankings are out. Obviously, nothing has changed up top. It's still the same 4. We've gone over this today where basically, to be honest, what matters is your one-loss record. If you're a big brand and where you were in the preseason polls that can basically leverage you through the season.
Yep.
Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, the top 4 still, Tyler, they'll get buys if the playoffs start today.
Yep.
Then Notre Dame, Miami, Georgia, Tennessee, SMU, Indiana, Boise State. That's the setup. On the bubble, Clemson, Bama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. So that's kind of the way it works. Ward Manuel, again, saying nothing like usual last night on the show on ESPN. We got to get this one. 26. They're impressed. Indiana got blown out. Let's make no mistake. In 60 minutes of football, Ohio State eventually wore down Indiana and whooped them. And this thing wasn't close. What do you think, Tyler, by the middle of the third quarter?
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Indiana hung out for about almost a full first half, then started making some mistakes. Ohio State took advantage, and they rode great the Hoosiers. But Ward Manuel says that the committee was impressed with Indiana against Ohio State.
Well, Reese, good to be with you again. We viewed Indiana. They played well at times against Ohio State, and Ohio State pulled out a victory and really came on in the second half of that game. But we were impressed with some of the things that Indiana did. And they dropped 5, but we still felt that their body of work was strong enough to remain in the top 10.
You know what you got to say here. First of all, when you start saying we like the things we saw from Indiana in that game, when you say that, the question back is what?
Yeah,
right.
The opening drive.
Yeah. Besides the you can't obviously take away things, but after the opening drive, when Indiana went down and scored a touchdown, 11 plays, I think 70 yards, 6 minutes off the clock. I guess the committee was impressed with Curtis Rourke going 8 of 18 for 68 yards.
Yeah,
for Indiana, averaging 2 yards a carry. That's impressive. Let's see, total yards, Ohio State 316, Indiana 153.
This reminds me a lot. I believe it was in the first year of the 14 playoff, where again, Mississippi State was the number 1 team initially, but they started falling because they lost a few games and obviously didn't make the playoff. They played Alabama, a pretty highly ranked matchup between the two. Alabama dominated that game. Mississippi State got a late touchdown and I think made it 22-19. And on the following ratings show, they didn't really drop Mississippi State a whole lot. And their criteria was, well, they made it close against Alabama. They didn't if you actually watch the game. They tacked on a late score that was insignificant to the final score to make it look better than it actually was. But if you actually watch the game, you know Alabama controlled it. Similar thing here. Ohio State dominated that entire game against Indiana. And yeah, the score was 23 points, but it wasn't even that close. And I understand where Ryan Day's coming from. I'm adding the extra touchdown at the end to make it a 3-score game to make the win look more impressive, because it was getting to the point where like, oh, hey, Indiana only lost by 2 touchdowns, but that wasn't the case with this game.
Yeah, and that's when you start saying that stuff like Ward Manuel did, then your first question is, dude, did you really watch the game?
Well, that he tells us they watch the games, Terry.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do.
Sure.
Hey, what's your criteria? We watch the games.
The eye test. Oh, the box score, the eye test of the box, because the box score is a dominant Ohio State win. Like I said, Indiana hung around for a quarter and a half, but it's not. The game isn't 30 minutes or 26 minutes or 20 to 60-minute football game, and they got worked.
This strikes me. Look, if Alabama and Ole Miss won on Saturday, Indiana would be like 12th or 13th, right? They'd be on the outside looking in. They would have no shot at jumping back in by beating Purdue. But because they're still in the top 10, they want to make it sound like they have belief in a team that they deem as one of the best to be able to play in the college football playoff. So that's what you get out of it.
Yeah, again, with Ward Manuel, it's like, just say this, ready? Indiana is 10-1, and we value the fact that they're 10-1, and in their 10 victories, their margin of victory is like 100 points because they've whooped a lot of bad teams. But we find value in the fact they're 10-1. Just say you. That's all you gotta say. You don't have to make up all this dog and pony show nonsense.
Don't lie.
Just say they're 10-1. We value your record, because they do. I'm looking at it right now. They value the record. They value that 10-1 over an 8-3 SEC team. Just come on, man. All right, Firehouse Up, text the hours next, 803-404-6100. We are live for another segment from one of our favorite spots, the Nest, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista. Terry Ford, Jeff's here, Jeannie, Graham, Nikki, the whole crew. We're here till 3 on the game. Get our Firehouse sub text of the hour here in just a minute. First of all, real quick, we have our Twitter X poll up. Does a win at Clemson on Saturday put the Gamecocks in the college football playoff? Yes or no? Very simple. Right now, 54% at no, 46% at yes, about 119 votes and over 800 views. We just put this up here a little while ago, so thank you very much for hopping in. A couple of responses, not without much more help, need a decisive win to have a shot. I say no because they need other things to happen, but the odds go way up, not without help. Yeah, I mean, obviously you need help in some things have to be goofy. Like I said when we opened the show, Tyler, was look, if you beat Clemson, that win to me is more valuable than Ole Miss beating Mississippi State or Alabama beating Auburn. Both the Rebels and the Tide are at home.
Yep.
They're playing teams that are near the bottom of the SEC standings. A win over Clemson to me should, if you're, looking at this as a body of work, and a what have you done for me lately, beating the number 12 team in the college football playoff poll should vault you ahead of both Ole Miss and Bama because you had the same 1-loss record, and should vault you over Clemson because you beat them head to head. Now they have 3 losses too, and it really puts you in at least some type of conversation where if you can get some chaos, then it gets interesting.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue to our Firehouse sub text of the hour because we asked for chaos scenarios earlier. Nameless Texter says Georgia loses to Georgia Tech in Texas. Tennessee loses to Vanderbilt. Auburn beats Alabama, and South Carolina beats Clemson. Bama 8-4, UGA 8-4, South Carolina 9-3, Tennessee 9-3 with no head-to-head fallback on. What happens then? I think at
that's a good one.
I think Carolina's in at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great one. Should have thrown in Ole Miss getting upset in the Egg Bowl by Mississippi State too to even make more chaos. That would have been good.
They may have meant to include that one, but I think Alabama, considering the fact they were the higher ranked team, which in theory makes them tougher to jump, losing to Auburn, that helps your case out a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's great chaos. Excellent text. Whoever that was, unnamed texter, good work on the Firehouse subtext line. That would be massive chaos. Very nice. All right, real quick, college football playoff. Let's look at we didn't really get into the bracket.
Yep.
All right, ready? Let's go through this first round real fast. Tell me how on the tingle issue does it make you?
Okay.
Ohio State, Arizona State. Ohio State will curb stomp them.
I think America's going to be cheering for Arizona State, but yes, Ohio State wins that one pretty easily.
Go Sun Devils, baby.
That's right.
Tennessee, Georgia is very interesting. A very interesting game. And that game would be in Athens.
Yeah, rematch, obviously.
Yep.
I mean, you're probably thinking around 7 or 10 points again. Now, does Tennessee already having a game's worth of notes on them play better? We'll see. I do think the home field advantage is a big factor there.
I do too. I think Georgia would win that game. Indiana would lose to Penn. Indiana wouldn't get whooped like they did against Ohio State, but Penn State would beat Indiana in State College.
Yeah, look, Penn State's not the kind of offense going to go out there and drill you for 70 points, but yeah, that one kind of screams, I don't know, 31-14, 31-20, something along those lines, maybe.
Yeah, don't disagree. And then SMU Notre Dame, that's interesting because the first thought is, well, you're going to go to South Bend. Notre Dame's playing really good on defense. As long as their offense doesn't do anything stupid, they should be able to bore SMU to death. SMU's got some players and some talent, man. That's one that, that one might raise an eyebrow if SMU hangs in there early, gets a couple of scores or gets a turnover or two. That one might be more interesting than, first meets the eye.
Yeah, there's definitely a scrappiness to SMU. And look, we can knock Notre Dame for losing to NIU earlier on the season, which I do think they should still be penalized for. They've been playing really good football as of late, and they've been dispatching of the teams that have been put in front of them, namely the service academies, pretty easily. So I'd give them the advantage in that. Again, that kind of screams 10, 14 point kind of game where, again, one of the big things about expanding the playoffs was avoiding blowouts. And we're looking at 3 of the 4 first round games saying, these probably aren't going to be all that competitive.
I think chalk moves through with Ohio State, Boise State, Georgia, Oregon, Penn State, Miami, Notre Dame, Texas. And again, it all can change in a week, obviously.
Sure.
And if you're Ohio State, being the 5 spot means you get Arizona State and then you go and play Boise State in the next round, which you should beat Boise State as well and move yourself into the semifinals. Ohio State would have a really nice road if this, if this was really the bracket.
That would set up swimmingly for Ohio State if it stayed that way.
And then they get Oregon, a rematch with Oregon, maybe, because if Oregon got Georgia, that game would be very interesting.
Indeed would be. That's right.
Penn State, Miami. and Notre Dame, Texas. We don't have time to get to those two. But anyway, Tyler, nice work, my friend. We appreciate it. We also want to thank Jeff, and we want to thank Jeannie and
Yep.
Graham and Nikki and all the folks here at the Nest. Thank you very much for putting up with us today. And we're going to go test drive a tub.